Welcome to the New American. This is Christian Gomez reporting. Earlier today on Good Morning America on an ABC network, Senator Kamala Harris, the junior senator for California, announced her campaign for the presidency of the United States of America. Today we are met with author and filmmaker, anti-communist researcher Trevor Loudon, whose books include The Enemies Within, as well as a documentary based off of that book. Trevor Loudon has done extensive research on members of Congress and their radical connections, including on Senator Kamala Harris. So today we're glad to have on the program Trevor Loudon. Thank you for joining us today, Trevor.
Look, it's great to be on, Christian. Thanks for the opportunity.
So, Trevor, what can you tell us about Kamala Harris and her connections with the radical left, and why we should be concerned about her running for the presidency? Is she just your average Joe Democrat, or is there more to her in terms of what the American people might not be aware about?
Look, I've studied all of the Democratic hopefuls in this election cycle. They're all socialist to some degree, but she is amongst the worst of them. And I predict right now that she will be the Democratic candidate. She has been chosen by the same people that chose Obama and nurtured for several years. From the Marxist circles to the more globalist circles, she is the anointed one. And so I'm predicting that she'll be the candidate.
So, what can you tell us about Harris's sort of radical left connections as opposed to other Democrats that maybe don't have the same kind of accolades among the communist left that Harris does have?
Well, Kamala Harris is a protege of a man called Stephen Phillips. Now, Steve Phillips is part of the Democracy Alliance, which is the alliance of multi-billionaires, George Soros, Tom Steyer, Norman Lear of People for the American Way. This is about 150 multi-millionaires and billionaires who give to left-wing candidates, and she will be their anointed candidate. Now, Steve Phillips, he started out as a young black college student at Stanford University in the 80s. He was very heavily involved with the League of Revolutionary Struggle, which was a pro-China Maoist outfit. Now, they were very actively involved. It was about 3,000 members. They were very actively involved and were the backbone of Jesse Jackson's Rainbow Coalition in 1984 and 1988. Now, if you remember the Rainbow Coalition, it was the idea of uniting the white progressives, the Latino progressives, the black progressives, the Asian American progressive, Native American, gay progressives, to get a rainbow coalition that could become a winning majority. Now, in those days, minorities were about 12% of the population. Now they're about 38%. So Steve Phillips was a big part of the Rainbow Coalition. After he left college, he married into the Sandler family from San Francisco, who made a lot of money. They owned Golden West Savings and Loan, I think the fifth largest S&L in the country. They sold it for $2.6 billion to Wachovia Bank, which bankrupted Wachovia, and they had to go and sign up to, they made their money out of, dodgy prime mortgages. And they eventually had to sell out to Wells Fargo. But anyway, so they got the money and they put half of it into the progressive movement. They put a whole lot into the Democracy Alliance, and Steve Phillips became their sort of emissary to the progressive movement and the Democratic Party. Now, in 2008, Steve Phillips got $10 million together and recreated the Rainbow Coalition strategy in the southern states by doing voter registration drives amongst Black and Latino communities. And that is how he got his friend Barack Obama ahead of Hillary Clinton. Now, the connection to Kamala Harris is this. At Stanford University, Steve Phillips had two close friends. One of them was a young black football player who was a radical, but not an extreme radical. And Steve Phillips bankrolled his career and has now positioned him to run for president. and that is Cory Booker, the senator from New Jersey. He also had a young friend, who was a radical, an extreme radical. She became a top official in the Hillary Clinton campaign, and her husband, at Steve Phillips's bequest, her husband, Tony West, became, I think, number 3 in the Eric Holder Justice Department. Well, Tony West's wife is Tony West's sister-in-law is Kamala Harris. So Kamala Harris has basically been backed by Steve Phillips since at least 2010. She's been, backed for the Attorney General of California, and now she's been promoted by Steve Phillips and the Democracy Alliance to be their anointed candidate in 2020. She has an extensive Marxist background, extensive socialist and Marxist ties, and she is the anointed person, a woman, half black, half Asian, Indian, the perfect candidate to unite the minorities and rerun the Rainbow Coalition strategy for 2020.
In fact, her parents met at college during the Civil Rights Movement.
Exactly.
And Kamala Harris, as Attorney General of California, she officiated the first same-sex marriage in the state following the Supreme Court ruling in 2013. So she has all of the sort of accolades of the far progressive left. Rainbow Coalition, you sort of mentioned the pro-LGBTQ, the African-American radical movements, student movements. She has all these accolades to boast about with the radical left. So would you say that she is more to the left than even Cory Booker? Should she be the nominee as opposed to Mr. Booker? Should he?
Yeah, look, Cory Booker, they're both puppets. They will both do the bidding of the radical left. So there's not a lot of difference between them. The difference is who can most capture the American public's imagination. And I would not be surprised if Kamala Harris was at the top of the ticket and Cory Booker or Julian Castro, who is also part of this sort of clique, was on the VP ticket. But the other thing about Kamala Harris, for a long time she was the mistress of Brown, I've forgotten his name now, the former mayor of San Francisco, and he was a hardcore Marxist, pro-communist radical. And so she has got it from every direction. She was effectively a sort of red diaper baby. She was the mistress of one of the most communist mayors that San Francisco's ever had. She's a protege of Steve Phillips, and she's involved in every far left cause you can possibly imagine.
Well, thank you, Trevor, for highlighting these facts to us, Trevor. We'll be covering the story of Kamala Harris and her presidential run here on thenewamerican.com, so be sure to check that out. And also, Trevor will probably be checking in with you again in the future for more updates regarding Kamala Harris and her radical left connection. So thank you for joining us today on the program.
Look, my pleasure. Thanks very much, Christian.